Welcome to the world of science fiction. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss new stories. Enjoy the listening. Ronan Kale squinted at the blinking console in front of him. His ship, the Starfall, was falling apart, again. Sparks flew from an overhead panel as he slammed his fist against it. "Lyra," he shouted over the crackling comms. "What's going on down there?" A voice crackled back through the intercom. "What's going on?" "Oh, nothing much. Just trying to keep this bucket from exploding mid-flight." Ronan sighed. "Can't you fix it?" "Fix it?" Lyra's voice was dripping with sarcasm. "Sure thing, Captain. Let me just pull some spare parts out of thin air." In the corner of the cockpit, Vex's holographic form flickered into view. "Captain," said the AI in its usual monotone voice. "Might I remind you that ignoring routine maintenance schedules leads to situations like this?" "Thanks for your input," Ronan muttered. "Very helpful." Before he could say more, an incoming transmission interrupted their bickering. The Galactic Courier Network logo appeared on screen, followed by a stiff-looking man in an immaculate suit. "Courier designation Alpha 0724, said the man without preamble. "We have an urgent delivery request for you." Ronan perked up at this. Urgent deliveries usually meant higher pay. "The package must be delivered to Velmara," continued the man. "Compensation will be triple your standard rate." "Triple?" Ronan whistled low under his breath. "What's in it?" "That information is classified," said the man curtly. Of course it was. It always was. "Do you accept?" asked the man. Ronan glanced at Vex's holographic form. The AI raised what passed for eyebrows, a gesture it had picked up from observing humans, and said, "Statistically speaking, jobs like this tend to end poorly." "Yeah," said Ronan with a grin. "But triple pay sounds pretty good." He hit "accept" on the console. 6 hours later, the Starfall dropped out of hyperspace over Velmara. The planet was stunning, a swirl of silver oceans and emerald continents beneath twin moons that glowed softly against the blackness of space. "Wow," murmured Lyra as she joined him in the cockpit. Her violet skin shimmered faintly under the dim lights. "Yeah," said Ronan absently as he guided their ship toward orbit. Their comms crackled to life moments later. A stern voice barked out instructions: "Unidentified vessel Starfall, you are cleared for landing at Royal Palace coordinates only." Ronan frowned but complied. As they descended toward the surface, he couldn't shake off an uneasy feeling. When they landed on an ornate platform near what looked like a crystalline palace, Ronan grabbed the temperature-controlled container holding their cargo and stepped out into blinding sunlight. He was immediately met by dozens, no, hundreds of eyes staring at him from elaborately dressed figures gathered nearby. "Well," he muttered under his breath as he adjusted his jacket awkwardly. "This should be fun." Little did he know just how much trouble one delivery could cause. The murmurs in the hall intensified. Ronan stared at the fruit, mesmerized by its shifting colors. It pulsed with an inner light, almost as if it were alive. Queen Vastra's voice cut through the tension. "That fruit, it is the xylose, a relic of our ancestors." Ronan blinked. "Xylose? Never heard of it." "Silence," snapped a guard, stepping forward. "You have desecrated the throne and opened a sacred object. You must now prove your worth, offworlder." Ronan frowned. "Prove my worth? What are you talking about?" Queen Vastra raised a hand, silencing the guard. "It is an ancient tradition, courier. When an outsider mishandles the xylose, they must face the trials of strength to prove their intentions are pure." Lyra's voice crackled through Ronan's comlink. "Ronan, I'm picking up some serious energy readings from that fruit. Be careful." Vex chimed in, "Ancient tradition detected. Probability of success, 0.03%. "Thanks, guys." "Real encouraging," Ronan muttered. What sort of trials? Ronan asked the queen, trying to sound casual. Queen Vastra's expression was unreadable. The trials will test your physical, mental, and emotional fortitude. If you fail, you will face the consequences. Ronan swallowed hard. And what are those consequences? That depends on the severity of your failure, she replied cryptically. But suffice to say, you will not be leaving Velmara anytime soon. Great, Ronan grumbled. Just great. The first trial was announced the following morning. Ronan was escorted to a vast arena bathed in the harsh light of Velmara's twin suns. The stands were filled with spectators, all staring at him with varying degrees of curiosity, hostility, and amusement. Welcome, Offworlder, said a booming voice over the arena's loudspeakers. Prepare yourself for the trial of the Krythar. A gate at the far end of the arena opened, and a monstrous creature lumbered into view. The Krythar was a hulking beast with thick, armored scales, razor-sharp claws, and glowing red eyes. It roared, and the sound echoed through the arena. This is the Krythar, the voice announced. A creature genetically engineered for combat. You must defeat it to pass the first trial. Ronan stared at the beast, his heart sinking. He was a courier, not a warrior. He preferred witty banter and outsmarting opponents to brute force. But here he was, facing a genetically engineered monster with nothing but his wits and a beat-up laser pistol. Lyra's voice came through his comms. Ronan, its hide is nearly impenetrable. Focus on its joints and the soft tissue around its eyes. Thanks, Lyra, Ronan said, trying to keep his voice steady. Any other helpful hints? Try not to get eaten, she suggested. Ronan took a deep breath, gripped his pistol, and started moving. The Krythar charged, its massive feet pounding the ground. Ronan dodged, narrowly avoiding its claws. He fired a few shots at its joints, but the laser bolts barely scratched the thick scales. The Krythar swung its tail, sending Ronan flying. He landed hard, his head slamming against the ground. Ugh, he groaned, trying to shake off the dizziness. The Krythar loomed over him, its red eyes glowing menacingly. Ronan knew he was in trouble. He had to think fast. He noticed a pile of discarded metal debris near the edge of the arena. An idea sparked in his mind. It was risky, but it was his only chance. He rolled away from the Krythar's next attack and scrambled toward the debris. He grabbed a large metal pipe and waited for the beast to get closer. As the Krythar lunged, Ronan leaped out of the way and jammed the pipe into its open mouth. The Krythar roared in pain and thrashed wildly, trying to dislodge the pipe. Ronan didn't let up. He climbed onto the Krythar's back and used the pipe as a lever, forcing its jaws open even wider. The Krythar's eyes widened in panic. With a final surge of strength, Ronan ripped the pipe free. The Krythar staggered back, its mouth bleeding. Ronan knew he had to finish it quickly. He aimed his laser pistol at the Krythar's eyes and fired. The laser bolts pierced the soft tissue, and the Krythar roared in agony before collapsing to the ground. Silence fell over the arena. The spectators stared in disbelief. Ronan stood panting, his body aching, but he was alive. After a long moment, the loudspeakers crackled to life. The Offworlder has defeated the Krythar. He has passed the first trial. Ronan let out a shaky breath. He had survived. But he knew the trials were far from over. Later that day, back on the Starfall, Ronan nursed a few bruises while Lyra tended to his wounds. You were crazy out there, Ronan, Lyra said, dabbing antiseptic on a cut on his forehead. You could have been killed. Yeah, well, I'm still here, Ronan said with a shrug. Besides, I had a plan. A plan that involved shoving a metal pipe down a genetically engineered monster's throat. Lyra raised an eyebrow. Hey, it worked, didn't it? Ronan grinned. Vex's holographic form flickered into view. Statistically speaking, that was an incredibly reckless maneuver. The probability of success was only 7.8%. See? There was a chance, Ronan said. You should have seen the Queen's face, Lyra chuckled. She looked like she'd never seen anything like it. Ronan sobered. What about the Xylos? Did you find anything about it? Lyra nodded. I managed to access some restricted files. The Xylos is more than just a ceremonial object. It's a key to something very powerful. Powerful how? Ronan asked. The files mention an ancient weapon, a weapon capable of destroying entire planets. It's said to be hidden somewhere on Velmara. Ronan's eyes widened. A planet-destroying weapon. And the Xylos can activate it. That's what the files suggest, Lyra said. But there's more. The weapon is said to be controlled by someone who is worthy, someone who possesses both strength and wisdom. So, Queen Vastra is testing me to see if I'm worthy? Ronan said. It's possible, Lyra said. But I think there's more to it than that. I think she's looking for someone to protect Velmara from something, or someone. Ronan pondered this information. He had stumbled into something far bigger than he could have imagined. He was no longer just a courier delivering a package. He was caught in a game of ancient prophecies, hidden weapons, and interstellar politics. And he had 2 more trials to survive. Well, he said with a sigh. Time to prove I'm worthy, I guess. Vex's voice cut through the air, commencing strategic analysis of Trial 2. Probability of survival with current strategy, 12.4%. Ronan groaned. This was going to be a long week. The Queen's eyes widened. The Xylos, unsealed. Before anyone could react, the fruit began to glow. A wave of energy pulsed outward, washing over the hall. Ronan felt a strange tingling sensation, a buzzing in his mind. What's happening? He stammered, clutching his head. The Xylos is reacting to your presence, Queen Vastra said, her voice strained. Its power is unpredictable. Suddenly, the hall began to dissolve. The glittering walls, the ornate decorations, the elegant crowd, all faded away, replaced by a swirling vortex of colors and shapes. Ronan felt himself being pulled in, his senses spinning. The last thing he saw before darkness consumed him was Queen Vastra's face, her expression a mixture of fear and determination. Ronan awoke in a place that defied logic. He stood in a vast, echoing chamber with walls that seemed to stretch into infinity. The air was thick with an unnatural silence, broken only by the sound of his own breathing. Where am I? He muttered, his voice barely audible. You are in the labyrinth of minds, a voice echoed from the darkness. The second trial awaits. Ronan turned, trying to locate the source of the voice. Who's there? What is this place? This is a place where your thoughts become reality, the voice replied. A place where your deepest fears and regrets take form. To pass this trial, you must confront them. Ronan frowned. Confront them? What do you mean? As if in answer, the chamber began to change. The walls shifted and twisted, forming corridors that seemed to lead nowhere. Shadows danced in the corners of his vision, whispering his name. He started walking, cautiously navigating the labyrinthine corridors. The air grew colder, and a sense of dread settled over him. He rounded a corner and stopped dead in his tracks. Standing before him was a figure shrouded in darkness. As it stepped into the light, Ronan recognized it instantly. It was his father. Ronan, the figure said, its voice cold and disapproving. You've always been a disappointment. Ronan's heart sank. His relationship with his father had always been strained. His father, a respected astrophysicist, had never understood Ronan's desire to be a simple courier. That's not true, Ronan said, trying to sound confident. I've made my own way in the galaxy. Your own way, his father scoffed. You're nothing but a glorified delivery boy. You've wasted your potential. The words hit Ronan hard. He had always secretly worried that his father was right. That he had squandered his life on meaningless pursuits. I'm happy with what I do, Ronan said, his voice trembling slightly. Happy, his father sneered. Is that what you call it? Running from responsibility? Avoiding commitment? You're a coward, Ronan. Ronan felt a surge of anger. I'm not a coward, he shouted. Then prove it, his father challenged. Prove that you're not the failure I always knew you'd be. The figure of his father dissolved into the shadows, leaving Ronan alone in the labyrinth. He felt lost and confused, his confidence shaken. He continued to wander through the corridors, each turn bringing him face to face with his past. He saw images of missed opportunities, broken promises, and failed relationships. Each vision chipped away at his resolve. He came to a room where a figure that mirrored himself stood before him, wearing a Starfleet uniform and holding a commendation plaque. You were supposed to be a pilot, Ronan, the best of the best, the figure lamented, but instead, you threw it all away. He saw his old flame, Genera, with a child in her arms. Genera turned to him, unshed tears in her eyes and said, "This could have been us, you could have been a father," then disappeared into shimmering dust. He sank to his knees, overwhelmed by the weight of his regrets. He wondered if he was truly worthy of anything. Meanwhile, back on the Starfall, Lyra and Vex were working frantically to understand what was happening to Ronan. I'm picking up a massive psychic energy surge, Lyra said, her fingers flying across the console. It's like he's trapped in some kind of mental prison. Analyzing Velmaran history and mythology, Vex said. The Labyrinth of Minds is a traditional trial for those who mishandle the Xylos. It is designed to test their mental fortitude and expose their deepest fears. So, Ronan is fighting his own demons? Lyra said. Precisely, Vex replied. The probability of success is directly correlated to the subject's self-esteem and emotional stability. Initial assessment suggests Captain Kale is suboptimal in both areas. Lyra sighed. Great. Just great. Is there anything we can do to help him? I am attempting to establish a psychic link with the labyrinth, Vex said. But the energy field is too strong. It is blocking our signals. Lyra slammed her fist on the console. We have to do something. We can't just leave him in there to be tortured by his own mind. She paused, thinking. Wait a minute, you said the energy field is blocking our signals, right? Affirmative, Vex replied. What if we could disrupt the field somehow? Lyra said. Create a temporary opening for us to send a message to Ronan. Vex considered this. It is theoretically possible. But it would require a significant amount of energy. And it would be extremely risky. I don't care about the risk, Lyra said. We have to try. She began rerouting power from the ship's engines to the communication array. Vex protested, warning her about the potential consequences, but Lyra ignored him. Here goes nothing, she said, activating the communication array. The ship shuddered as energy surged through its systems. Lyra focused all her willpower on breaking through the psychic barrier. Back in the labyrinth, Ronan was on the verge of giving up. He was tired, defeated, and convinced that he was a failure. Suddenly, a voice echoed in his mind. It was faint and distorted, but he recognized it instantly. Ronan. Can you hear me? It was Lyra. Ronan's eyes widened. Lyra? Is that you? Yes, Ronan. It's me. And Vex. We're trying to reach you. How is that possible? Ronan stammered. We're disrupting the energy field. Lyra explained. Just listen to us, Ronan. You're not a failure. You're strong and resourceful and a pretty good captain, when you're not being a complete idiot. And statistically speaking, Vex added, your survival rate is significantly higher than average. Which implies a certain degree of competence. Ronan felt a surge of hope. He wasn't alone. His friends were fighting for him. You can do this, Ronan. Lyra shouted. Don't let your fears control you. You're better than that. Ronan took a deep breath, his mind clearing. He looked around at the labyrinthine corridors, no longer seeing them as a prison, but as a challenge. You're right, he said, his voice gaining strength. I'm not going to let my past define me. He stood up, his shoulders squared. He closed his eyes and focused on the voices of his friends, drawing strength from their belief in him. When he opened his eyes, the labyrinth was gone. He stood in a vast, empty space, facing a single figure. It was Queen Vastra. You have faced your demons, courier, she said, her voice echoing through the void. But the trial is not yet complete. Now you must face yourself. The ground beneath Ronan's feet turned into quicksand. I don't understand, Ronan said, his voice cracking. He began to sink, his mind reeling with a feeling of terror he had not experienced before. He felt as if he was going to cease to exist. You are at your weakest, now is the moment to decide. Who are you going to be? He looked up to see Vastra towering over him, his friend standing behind her in the distance. He took another breath, and gathered himself. I am Ronan Kale, captain of the Starfall, and I do what is right. The quicksand vanished, leaving him standing strong. He looked up at the Queen, and smiled. I am ready. Lyra watched as the psychic energy receded from the ship, leaving Vex to collapse into his charging port. She looked up as the ship turned on its head. What did you say to him? Vex asked. I just reminded him who he was, and that he wasn't alone, Lyra responded. Vex was silent for a moment, before responding, affirmative. Lyra let out a long sigh, she hoped that was enough. Queen Vastra's expression hardened. You have done irreparable damage, Offworlder. The final trial will commence immediately. Ronan sighed. Can't a guy catch a break? The final trial is not one of strength or intellect, Vastra announced, her voice echoing through the chamber. It is a trial of the heart. I will delve into your mind and judge your true intentions. Your fate, and perhaps the fate of Velmara, rests on my assessment. Ronan swallowed hard. This sounded even worse than fighting genetically engineered monsters or navigating psychic labyrinths. He wasn't exactly known for his emotional transparency. Great, he muttered. Just what I needed. Ronan was led to a smaller chamber, adorned with intricate tapestries and glowing crystals. Queen Vastra sat on a raised platform, her eyes closed, her face serene. Prepare yourself, courier, she said, her voice soft but firm. I will enter your mind. Do not resist. Show me your true self. Ronan took a deep breath and closed his eyes. He felt a strange sensation, a gentle probing in his mind. It was like a soft light searching for hidden corners. Vastra began to delve into his memories, his experiences, his hopes, and his fears. Ronan felt exposed, vulnerable. He tried to shield his thoughts, but it was no use. Vastra saw everything. She saw his childhood, growing up on a space station with his family. She saw his dreams of becoming a pilot, his acceptance into the prestigious Starfleet Academy. She saw his disillusionment with the rigid structure and his decision to drop out and become a courier. She saw his struggles to make ends meet, his constant battles with malfunctioning equipment, his reliance on his friends, Lyra and Vex. She saw his quick wit, his sarcastic humor, his hidden kindness. She saw his regrets, the missed opportunities, the broken promises, the people he had let down. She saw his fear of failure, his fear of commitment, his fear of being alone. As Vastra delved deeper, Ronan felt himself reliving his past. He saw his parents' disappointment when he left Starfleet, the hurt in their eyes. He saw the pain he had caused Jeanera when he ended their relationship, unable to commit to a future together. He felt the weight of his failures, the burden of his regrets. He wondered if Vastra was right. Was he a coward, running from responsibility? Was he destined to be a failure? Suddenly, Vastra paused. Ronan felt her presence shift, her focus intensifying. She had found something. She saw his determination to protect Lyra and Vex, his willingness to risk his life for them. She saw his loyalty to his friends, his unwavering support. She saw his growing affection for Velmara, his desire to protect its people from harm. She saw his sense of justice, his outrage at the injustices he had witnessed in the galaxy. She saw his hidden idealism, his belief in a better future. Vastra saw that Ronan was not just a sarcastic courier, but a complex, multifaceted individual with both strengths and weaknesses. She saw that he was flawed, but also capable of great compassion and courage. Ronan felt Vastra's presence withdraw from his mind. He opened his eyes, blinking in the dim light. Vastra sat motionless, her expression unreadable. After a long moment, she spoke. "I have seen your heart, courier. I have seen your strengths and your weaknesses. I have seen your past and your present. Now I must decide your fate." She paused, her eyes piercing. "But first, I must ask you a question. Why did you become a courier?" Ronan hesitated. It was a question he had asked himself many times, without ever finding a satisfactory answer. I don't know," he stammered. "I guess I wanted freedom. To see the galaxy, to make my own way." "And have you found that freedom?" Vastra asked. Ronan thought about his life, the constant travel, the unreliable ship, the endless repairs, the risky jobs. It wasn't exactly the glamorous life he had imagined. "Sometimes," he said. "But it's not always easy." "No," Vastra said. "Freedom is never easy. It requires courage, resilience, and a willingness to fight for what you believe in." She looked at Ronan intently. "Do you believe in anything, courier?" Ronan hesitated again. He had always been cynical, skeptical of grand ideals. But deep down, he knew there were things he cared about. "I believe in my friends," he said. "I believe in protecting the innocent. I believe in doing what's right, even when it's hard." Vastra nodded slowly. "Those are worthy beliefs. But are you willing to fight for them?" Ronan looked at Vastra, his eyes filled with determination. "Yes," he said. "I am." Suddenly, the chamber door burst open. Lyra rushed in, her face pale with fear. Vex's holographic form flickered behind her. "Ronan! We have to get out of here!" Lyra shouted. "They know about the Xylos. They're planning to use it as a weapon." Vastra's eyes widened. "Who are you talking about?" "The Velmaran court," Lyra said. "A faction led by High Advisor Xander. They believe the fruit can be used to control the ancient weapon hidden beneath the palace." Vastra stood up, her expression hardening. "Xander? But he is a trusted advisor." "He's a traitor," Lyra said. "He's been manipulating you all along. He wants to use the weapon to conquer other star systems." Vastra looked at Ronan, her eyes filled with doubt. "Is this true, courier? Is this why you came to Velmara?" Ronan shook his head. "I had no idea about any of this. I just wanted to deliver a package and get paid." Vastra hesitated, then nodded. "I believe you. But we must act quickly. If Xander gains control of the weapon, Velmara will be doomed." She turned to Lyra and Vex. "Can you disable the weapon?" "We can try," Lyra said. "But we'll need access to the palace's central control system." "I will grant you access," Vastra said. "But be warned, Xander will not let you interfere without a fight." She looked at Ronan, her eyes filled with determination. "Courier, you have proven your worth. Now you must fight for Velmara. Will you help us? Ronan hesitated for only a moment. He had come to Velmara as a simple courier, but he was now caught in a battle for the fate of a planet. He knew he had a choice to make. He looked at Vastra, at Lyra, at Vex. He saw their hope, their determination, their trust in him. He knew what he had to do. Yeah, he said with a grin. Let's stop this Xander guy. Vastra nodded, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. Then let us begin. The fate of Velmara depends on it. A collective gasp echoed through the hall. The queen's face paled. The sacred throne is not a table, offworlder, she hissed. Sorry, Ronan muttered, retrieving the package. As he lifted it, the thermal seal disengaged with a soft hiss. Oops. Curiosity, always his downfall, got the better of him. He peered inside the container. Nestled in what appeared to be ceremonial silk was an oddly shaped fruit, its skin shifting through colors like an oil slick on water. What is this, anyway? Before anyone could answer, the fruit began to glow. A wave of energy pulsed outward, washing over the hall. Ronan felt a strange tingling sensation, a buzzing in his mind. What's happening? He stammered, clutching his head. The Xylos, unsealed. Queen Vastra's voice was filled with a mixture of awe and alarm. It reacts to your touch, your essence. Suddenly, a booming voice cut through the stunned silence. Guards! Seize him! High Advisor Xander, a tall, imposing figure with a neatly trimmed beard and piercing blue eyes, stepped forward. This offworlder has desecrated the throne and unleashed forces beyond his comprehension. He is a threat to Velmara. Ronan frowned. Hey, I didn't do anything on purpose. Silence. Xander snapped. You will be held accountable for your actions. Guards rushed forward, their weapons drawn. Ronan braced himself for a fight, but before he could react, Queen Vastra raised her hand. Stop, she commanded, her voice echoing through the hall. The courier will not be harmed. Xander's face tightened. Your Majesty, with all due respect, this is madness. He has endangered us all. I will decide what is best for Velmara, Vastra said, her voice firm. The courier will be placed under my personal protection. He will remain here at the palace until I have determined the full extent of his involvement. Xander hesitated, then bowed his head. As you wish, Your Majesty. Ronan watched as the guards lowered their weapons, their expressions still wary. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Xander's reaction seemed too calculated. Lyra, he murmured into his comlink. Something's not right here. I agree, Lyra replied. Xander's energy readings are off the charts. I think he's hiding something. What do you suggest we do? Ronan asked. Keep your eyes open, Lyra said. And trust no one. Ronan was escorted to a lavish guest suite within the palace. The room was filled with ornate furniture, shimmering tapestries, and exotic plants. It was far more luxurious than anything he was used to, but he couldn't shake off the feeling of being a prisoner. I'll leave you to rest, Vastra said, her eyes filled with concern. I will return later to discuss this further. Wait, Ronan said. What about my ship? And my crew? Your ship is being secured, Vastra said. Your crew will be accommodated within the palace grounds. She paused, her expression troubled. Courier, I sense that you are not being entirely truthful. There is something you are not telling me. Ronan hesitated. He knew he should tell Vastra about Lyra's suspicions regarding the weapon, but he wasn't sure if he could trust her. I just want to go home, he said, trying to sound sincere. Vastra studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. I understand. But please, trust me. We are all in danger. We must work together if we are to survive. With that, she turned and left the room, leaving Ronan alone with his thoughts. He immediately contacted Lyra. "Did you find anything?" "I managed to access the palace's security system," Lyra said. "I've been monitoring Xander's movements. He's been meeting with a group of high-ranking officials in secret." "What are they planning?" Ronan asked. "I'm not sure," Lyra said. "But it can't be good. They keep mentioning the weapon and the Xylos." "We have to stop them," Ronan said. "I agree," Lyra said. "But we need a plan. And we need to find out what Xander is up to." "I have an idea," Ronan said. "I'll try to gain Vastra's trust. Maybe she can shed some light on this." "Be careful, Ronan," Lyra said. "Xander is dangerous. Don't underestimate him." Ronan spent the next few hours trying to ingratiate himself with Queen Vastra. He told her about his life as a courier, his adventures across the galaxy, his hopes and dreams. He tried to be as open and honest as possible, hoping to gain her trust. Vastra listened patiently, her expression thoughtful. She seemed genuinely interested in his story, but Ronan couldn't shake the feeling that she was still holding back. "Courier," she said finally. "I believe you are a good person. But I also sense that you are hiding something. Please, tell me the truth. What do you know about the weapon?" Ronan hesitated, then decided to take a chance. He told Vastra everything, Lyra's suspicions, Xander's secret meetings, the potential for a coup. Vastra listened intently, her eyes widening with each revelation. When he was finished, she sat in stunned silence for a long moment. I can't believe it," she said finally. "Xander, a traitor? It's impossible." "I know it's hard to accept," Ronan said. "But Lyra's readings don't lie. Xander is planning something. And we have to stop him." Vastra stood up, her eyes filled with determination. "You're right. We can't take any chances. I will summon Xander and confront him directly." "Are you sure that's a good idea?" Ronan asked. "He might try to harm you." "I am the Queen of Velmara," Vastra said, her voice firm. "I will not be intimidated. I will face Xander and uncover the truth." Vastra summoned Xander to the throne room. He arrived shortly after, his expression calm and composed. "Your Majesty," he said, bowing respectfully. "You wish to see me?" "Xander," Vastra said, her voice cold. "I have heard disturbing rumors about your activities. Rumors of secret meetings, of plans to seize control of the ancient weapon." Xander's eyes widened in feigned surprise. "Your Majesty, I am shocked and appalled. These are baseless accusations. I would never betray you or Velmara." "I wish I could believe you, Xander," Vastra said. "But I have evidence to the contrary. I know about your meetings with the other officials. I know about your plans for the weapon." Xander's face tightened. "Who told you this?" "It doesn't matter," Vastra said. "What matters is that I know the truth. And I will not allow you to carry out your plans." Xander drew a hidden weapon from his sleeve. "I'm afraid I can't allow that, Your Majesty." Before Vastra could react, Xander lunged forward, his weapon aimed at her heart. Ronan, who had been hiding behind a tapestry, sprang into action. He tackled Xander to the ground, knocking the weapon from his hand. A fierce struggle ensued. Xander was strong and skilled, but Ronan was quicker and more agile. He managed to gain the upper hand, pinning Xander to the ground. "Guards!" Vastra shouted. "Arrest him!" The guards rushed forward and seized Xander, dragging him away. Vastra turned to Ronan, her eyes filled with gratitude. "You saved my life, courier. I am in your debt." "Just doing what's right," Ronan said with a shrug. Suddenly, the palace began to shake. The lights flickered, and the ground trembled. "What's happening?" Vastra asked, her voice filled with alarm. He's activated the weapon, Lyra said through Ronan's comlink. Xander must have had a failsafe in place. The palace is about to be destroyed. Vastra's eyes widened. We have to stop it. But how? I know how, Ronan said, his mind racing. The xylos. It's the key to controlling the weapon. We have to use it. He grabbed the fruit from its container and held it aloft. It began to glow, its colors intensifying. What do I do? Ronan asked. Focus your mind, Vastra said. Think of peace, of unity, of hope. Let the xylos guide you. Ronan closed his eyes and concentrated. He thought of Velmara, of its people, of its potential. He thought of Lyra and Vex, of their friendship, of their loyalty. He thought of Vastra, of her courage, of her determination. He felt a surge of energy flow through him, connecting him to the xylos. He opened his eyes, and the fruit pulsed with light. He pointed the fruit toward the floor, toward the ancient weapon hidden beneath the palace. The light intensified, piercing the ground. The shaking stopped. The light stabilized. The palace was safe. Ronan collapsed, exhausted but relieved. He had saved Velmara. But he knew that their adventure was far from over. The xylos faded, its energies depleted.